So I think that'll help pause some of the anxiety for business owners.
So you believe we'll get to around $600 billion forgivable loans? Hi, this is Texas House Speaker Dennis Bonnen checking in for the first installment of my new video series called A Texas Vision, Life During and After COVID-19. In these conversations, I'm talking with experts from around the world of business, medicine, academia, and government about what you need to know right now about ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. My guest today is Kevin Kuhlman. He is the Senior Director of Government Relations for the National Federation of Independent Business, known as NFIB. NFIB has been at the forefront of helping small business owners and their employees get through the recovery from the pandemic, especially on matters such as working on the federal level in the advancement of the interests of the small business owners in regard to the stimulus bills that have been passed, navigating SBA loans and the unemployment matters, and then helping to get our economy going again, which we all desperately want to see happen sooner than later. So with that, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. First, tell us a little bit about NFIB, your organization, and what you've been doing in response to COVID-19 pandemic, and how those efforts have had an impact on everyday Texans.
Oh, thank you, Speaker Bonnen. I appreciate the opportunity. NFIB is the nation's leading small business advocacy organization. We have approximately 300,000 members nationwide. We have offices in D.C. and all 50 state capitals, including Austin, Texas, where our state director, Annie Spillman, leads the charge at the State House and with the governor there. NFIB has been around since 1943. We have a one member, one vote philosophy where we send out member ballots at the state and federal level, and they send back, and that is what shapes our position. We also have a research and legal center that produces monthly economic surveys, as well as is a public interest legal center that defends small business owners before the district courts and Supreme Court. A little bit about our efforts on COVID-19. We aspire to be the resource for small business owners on their obligations and their options. Specifically at the federal level, there have been three laws responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. The first one authorized an expansion of small business economic injury disaster loans from the SBA. The second one put new paid leave requirements on small business owners. And the third one created some of these new lending options, the Paycheck Protection Program, forgivable loans. It expanded unemployment insurance assistance. And we advocated on each of these three pieces of legislation, supported the first one about the economic injury disaster loans, opposed the second one that put all the paid leave requirements on business owners, and supported the third one for some small business liquidity and opportunities there.
Kevin, I recently saw a statement from the NFIB president, Brad Close, that said that a lot of small business owners were being shut out of the Paycheck Protection Plan program. Can you elaborate on that? Has that been resolved, or what's going on there?
I think it is being resolved. Small business, we're obviously in a very uncertain time with very high anxiety for small business owners. And they realize that there's kind of a finite pot of money for this program. In the third COVID response law, the CARES Act, Congress appropriated $349 billion in these Paycheck Protection Program forgivable loans. And small business owners have been tracking that closely. They're kind of watching tweets from the SBA administrator or from the Secretary of Treasury saying, hey, we're up to $71+ billion and approaching $100 billion in loan disbursement. They're seeing that. They're saying, wait, I haven't gotten my application submitted yet. I'm still looking for a lender. So that's creating a whole lot of anxiety.
So is the anxiety about getting in before the forgiven dollars are all allocated? Is that the real anxiety?
I really think that is the real anxiety. They're afraid that it's first come, first serve, and they'll be locked out. The good news is, well, good news, bad news. The Senate was scheduled to appropriate another $200 to $250 billion into the Paycheck Protection Program today. Now, Democrats in the Senate blocked that, but I do think they'll overcome whatever differences they have, and they will be really putting more funds, appropriating more funds for this program. And I think it's going to be $250 billion. So I think that'll help pause some of the anxiety for business owners.
So you believe we'll get to around 600 billion forgivable loans if they meet the requirements and the standards, which oversimplified are taking care of your employees that you had pre-COVID-19 and ensuring that you keep them employed, health benefits paid going through the next 2 months. You believe we'll be to $600 billion if Congress takes their next action, is what you think the total number will be?
I do think that is going to be it, and I think they're even open to more, depending on what depending on the public health element to this. Will we have to remain closed for an extended period of time? But also trying to restore the economic livelihood. I think this is one of the most bipartisan provisions, which is fantastic. It was not the holdup in that third law; that was other provisions. So I do think it'll be around $600 billion and could even be more if necessary. And NFIB will continue to monitor that.
So, Kevin, could you explain for us the differences between the programs, though, on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL, and then, of course, the Paycheck Protection? So what is the difference there that individuals and business owners need to understand?
Sure. The economic injury disaster loans are low interest loans administered directly through the Small Business Administration. People who are interested can go to SBA.gov. It's one of their featured things. You click on that, and you apply directly through the SBA. The interest rates for these loans are 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits. The loans have longer terms, which can be up to 30 years, and they vary by circumstances. They have broader uses and utility, such as accounts receivable and debt obligations, than the PPP forgivable loans. But all these loans must be paid back with interest. Now, there is a slight incentive, and that's an up to $10,000 forgivable emergency grant that you're supposed to get turned around in 72 hours. Now, we haven't heard that the 72 hours has kind of been strictly held to. It may be a little bit longer than that, but there is supposed to be this up to $10,000 emergency forgivable grant that comes with an economic injury disaster loan that's done directly through SBA. The second option, the Paycheck Protection Program forgivable loans, these are lower interest forgivable loans that are administered through financial institutions as opposed to the SBA. Now, they are 100% guaranteed by the SBA. So in the third COVID response law, the CARES Act, they appropriated this $349 billion for these PPPLs. The interest rate for these loans are 1%, and on expenses that are non-forgivable. But the term is much shorter, 2 years.
1% for 2 years, right?
Yes,
1%
yes.
2 years. If it's not forgiven, but if they do the loan right, shouldn't overwhelmingly all or most all of the loan be forgiven, done correctly?
Absolutely. If you use the loan for payroll, rent or lease payments, mortgage interest, not mortgage principal, but mortgage interest, and utilities, then all of that loan in an 8-week period after receiving the loan, all of that will be forgiven. What one percentage I'd like to point out is in the regulations, they said 75% must be used on payroll and 25% may be used on the fixed costs that we just discussed.
Which is great, because that's because they want Texans and Americans keeping their jobs at work, even if they're not at work, because we tell people to stay home. They don't have to worry about job security if their employer takes advantage of the opportunity, correct?
Absolutely. Even if a business is shut down, the goal of this program is to keep employees connected to employers and to pay them even if there is no work to be done.
So, Kevin, let me ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges you're still foreseeing coming in dealing and responding with COVID-19 pandemic, and what should Texans be doing to prepare for what some of those challenges could be?
I think, my mother used to say, expect the worst and hope for the best, in other words. So really what we what we're seeing from our surveys and what we're seeing from a bunch of other private economic forecasts is, unemployment may shoot up to above 13%. Probably be lower in Texas. It generally is. But there's going to be long-term economic consequences. From a public health perspective, this thing could come back in the fall, right? We're doing everything we can to try to avoid those scenarios, but just think about that. As you think about your financial assistance options, compare the economic injury disaster loan from SBA to the Paycheck Protection Program from private financial institutions. And even now, if you're a larger business, we have this new Federal Reserve Main Street lending facility that folks should take a look at and investigate a little bit as well. So really look at all your options. And we should remember this: for 39 or for 26 months before this COVID pandemic began, finding qualified employees was the number one problem for small business owners. So you're going to want to try to hang on to those employees as much as possible. Think about revamping and building up, but try to hang on to those employees for as long as possible, because business owners are very familiar with trying to find qualified employees is a very difficult challenge.
So we're getting close to running out of time. So what 2 or 3 things should Texans do right now to follow along with your efforts and receive information on what NFIB is doing to help Texans and business owners?
Well, I think number one is bookmark NFIB.com. There we hope to make a central resource for all the federal government links and information, all the agencies that are being involved there that matter to small business owners, as well as translating a lot of the legislation and regulations related to COVID-19. We continue to update it as all of implementation continues to update all the guidance. So that's number one. Number two, speak to your banker, speak to your lender, talk about what the options are. I know that can be kind of a challenge at this point in time, as many of those are shut down as well, but be patient and be persistent. Don't give up hope. If you get bad news from perhaps your financial institution, explore more. I think Treasury's trying to bring on financial technology companies for these forgivable loans, and they intend to expand this. So don't give up. And we said more money is coming, and just continue to kind of follow along and be your best advocate. As you know, Mr. Speaker, at NFIB, we just aspire to be the liaison. Really what matters is connecting with constituents, connecting with those small business owners. Tell your story, be your best advocate, talk about the challenges that you're experiencing. This is the time that's more important to do than ever before.
So take the information and the facts, but fight for your rights and your opportunities, and use NFIB and other organizations to let you know what those are. And keep in mind, I want to encourage people to remember, because of the amazing response we're seeing from state and federal governments, things change. One thing I want to point out, Kevin, that NFIB and others and our members of Congress, President Trump, the administration deserve credit for. Tomorrow will be the 2-week anniversary of passing the third stimulus. And I've never seen the federal government put billions of dollars out to the economy in such an expeditious way. It's pretty extraordinary. So we need to have patience and persistence, as you said. But Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's very helpful. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and thank you for joining. I hope you've learned as much as I have in these conversations. And to learn more about this topic in particular, click the link in the video description and dig a little deeper. And so until we meet again, let's do our part to make Texas stronger than it ever was. And let's do what we can to stay home, wash your hands, socially distance, and keep in mind that vision of Texas that will be even greater and stronger once we defeat COVID-19. Thank you, and Texas will soon be the economic and cultural icon of America that it always has been once we get through this. And take care, and God bless Texas. Thank you.